He is one of the most important living legends in the history of Chilean ufology, but the truth is that he captivates the imagination of people all around the world. Researchers from all over arrived in Latin America to try to uncover the truth behind testimonies and evidence that never cease to amaze. It's said to be a supposed place where a congregation lives, experimenting with advanced technology, even curing diseases that are untreatable by our science. It's an island governed by laws different from those we know, where the human genetic code is being researched for purposes that are still not entirely clear. According to experts, this mysterious island would be located in the Aysén region, between the Conos archipelago and the Huaytecas archipelago. It's even possible to find its coordinates if you have enough patience. During the 2012 phenomenon, various New Age believers tried to organize expeditions to the area, all without success. Many even suffered serious accidents when they set out on the journey. The media impact of the case led to 2 official expeditions, one with the support and personnel of the Chilean Navy and another private one. The result? Only water. And as they say, no one can reach this place unless they are previously invited. The inhabitants of this island, according to the few witnesses who have managed to interact with them, are said to be beings with a human shape and very tall Caucasian features. They speak a very slow and strange Spanish, and they call themselves by the names of famous archangels. Extraterrestrial bases on Earth? A kind of religious sect with certain powers? Maybe a mind control experiment, or as some claim, a secret society linked to Nazism? When was the first contact with this island made? What happened to the main witnesses? Is it true that there are similar places in other parts of the world? Today we're going to dive into the mysterious and intriguing case of Friendship Island. But before we begin, I invite you to leave your comments down below. The goal for this video is 2,000 comments, so you can comment anything, whether you knew about the case or not. Suggestions for possible videos, a phrase, a word, whatever you want. And also, I invite you to join the membership right here because you'll be able to access a ton of uncensored and ad-free videos. Before anyone else click the join button to really help me out with the channel. Now, let's begin. Ernesto de la Fuente Gandarillas was born in Santiago, Chile on December 17, 1939. He studied mechanical civil engineering at the University of Concepcion between the 50s and 60s. Not out of vocation, but out of obligation, mostly following his father's wishes. However, the main activity that would end up providing him with financial support would be film and television. First, he had a position at Channel 9 in Chile, and then he went to the United States where he made documentaries. Although he dreamed of being a cameraman, since he was the only Spanish-speaking technician who could skillfully handle sound, he was quickly relegated to that area. Although that did not satisfy his personal ambitions, the truth is that being the only one allowed him to get good jobs. And not without effort and dedication, he was able to make a name for himself and save up some money in dollars. When he thought his cycle was complete, Ernesto returned to Chile, and since there, the audiovisual business was not as healthy as it was in the United States. He moved in September 1983, turning 45 years old. To Chiloé, where he bought an 11-meter radio station. Was his plan to practice radio as an amateur? And why not rent out his antenna to potential clients? He never imagined that radio station would completely change his life. But not because it gave him a new source of income, but because it offered him a way to communicate that would change him forever. After some time, which the man used to master the complex equipment, he managed to make friends through the radio with other settlers who, as they told him, were also settling in, although much farther south than he was. They introduced themselves as a religious congregation called Friendship, a congregation that had bought an island in the Los Chonos archipelago. The conversations with these individuals started to become more and more common and lengthy. Ernesto found great companionship in these people, but also a great mystery. Their knowledge and culture were incredible, but the strangest thing was that they were based on principles different from ours. For example, their mathematics didn't use base 10 like ours, but base 6, which sometimes, for certain calculations, turned into base 60. Their medicine also started from different principles, as did their history, anthropology, paleontology, astronomy, and physics. Their wisdom was overwhelming. Ernesto was talking with several individuals from the island. Their names were coincidentally biblical: Ariel, Raphael, Gabriel. He even mentioned that when Ernesto praised the wisdom with which they conducted themselves, they responded that all they did was spread what the angels of the Lord communicated to them. Over time, other people began to join the conversations. People who, like Ernesto, were able to pick up the frequency coming from that remote corner. All of them, at the end of the day, were as fascinated as the man, spending entire nights analyzing what they had heard. Ernesto learned a few months later, when the relationship became a bit more intimate, that the friendship owned a yacht, the Middlest II, with which they supplied the needs of their congregation. One day they called him on the radio so they could meet in person at the Cuenchi dock. Of course, the man didn't hesitate and drove there, filled with curiosity. When Ernesto saw the friendship people for the first time, the aura of mystery only grew stronger. They looked like healthy people, of an indeterminate age, somewhere between 35 and 55 years old. Their hair was dark blonde. They all had light-colored eyes and suntanned skin. They were taller than average, but what stood out the most, as Ernesto would later say, was the peace they radiated with their presence. After this meeting, they began to visit the sound technician at his home, and he would get to know them even more deeply. This relationship would literally end up saving his life. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. After the winter of 1984, the people from Friendship asked Ernesto for a favor. What he had to do was pretty easy. He had to receive families and people who were heading as guests to Friendship Island at train stations, bus terminals, and similar places. Ernesto had to act as a driver, transporting this group of people in his car to a small nearby port where the Middlest II would pick them up. The man obviously didn't hesitate to accept the job, especially because he felt a great fascination for these men who were so balanced and gentle. On one of these trips, he met the Lucero family. This wasn't their real last name, but rather the nickname they used as amateur radio operators. Ariel explained to Ernesto that it was Octavio, his wife Cristina, and their 3 daughters. They would arrive on a specific date at the Puerto Montt bus terminal. However, a few days before the scheduled date to pick them up, Ariel told him that the family wouldn't be coming because they had some last-minute problems. The missed meeting with Octavio's family happened on 2 other occasions. By that time, Ernesto had already been invited to visit the island, but he always refused, claiming that he didn't have time to settle there because of other obligations. The truth is that, after some time, Ernesto noticed something at least curious. Although there were a number of people who went to the island every week, no one ever came back from there. Or at least as far as he knew. Becoming more and more obsessed, Ernesto began to look for maps to try to find the exact location of the island. While those searches occupied his time, he got in touch, almost by chance, with another radio operator who ran a station called Lucero. It was without a doubt that Octavio E.S.C., who had failed 3 times to make his trip to Friendship. Following an impulse, Ernesto took the microphone and, after the usual greetings, explained to the others who he was. Octavio's voice changed and he immediately suggested they meet. Did he want to talk? His tone showed urgency. Ernesto answered yes, suddenly serious as well. When he met Octavio and his family, the situation bordered on comedy. Ernesto was looking for answers from the other person, and the other was looking for the same answers from Ernesto. After it became very clear that both of them were fully aware of what was happening on the island Friendship, Octavio told him his incredible story. For Octavio, everything had started when he intercepted an emergency message coming from the already mentioned Mittelestato who was operating the ship, a man named Alberto. That night, he was trying to establish communication with Iquique because he was in the presence of a mysterious light that was causing numerous malfunctions in his electronic equipment. The strange object, he described, had started to descend until it was right above the boat. It must have been radiating a great amount of energy. According to his words, some sailors immediately began to lose their hair, while also feeling an intense burning heat. Octavio, who couldn't believe what he was hearing, had turned up the volume and had come over to offer help. After a short while, Alberto reported that the phenomenon had disappeared as quickly as it had begun. In an instant, the violent light was gone. Octavio and Alberto stayed in touch with the police. Alberto had told Octavio that some rather strange beings, whom he described as gringos, they had hired him to take people to an island and had equipped his boat with strange devices. Alberto and Octavio would have frequent conversations about the island and its occupants over the radio for nearly a year. But things had changed when, after some time without going on the air, the operator of the Mitilo II contacted Octavio. Someone with a soft voice probably, in temperaturas. It was Ariel. The friendship was imminent. Once again, the vast knowledge that Ariel showed in any subject that came up. He left his conversation partner speechless. In this case, Octavio, who all the time thought they were religious people, maybe Mormons, never considered, of course, the possibility that they were extraterrestrials. Things got even stranger when, on one occasion, Ariel mentioned to Octavio not to worry about his mother, that around 7 in the evening she would be resting. Then, the conversation ended, leaving Octavio quite puzzled. When that afternoon he was called and told that his mother had died at 7 in the evening of natural causes, he was stunned. After that, Octavio was invited to visit the island with his family. But, as we saw, the trip was cancelled 3 times. Ernesto wanted to know why. Octavio, feeling guilty, said he knew the reason. It was because he and his family had shown fear. Fear? Ernesto asked. Fear? Why? Octavio then sighed deeply. He told Ernesto that what he was about to tell him was hard to believe. After what had happened with his mother, Octavio began secretly recording, without the friendship's permission, the conversations they had over the radio. On one occasion, Ariel interrupted himself and, without exasperation or reproach, said to him, "Stop for a moment and look at the recorder, because the tape got tangled." The man then realized, stunned by surprise, that the tape had indeed gotten tangled. How was that possible? But that was nothing. Compared to other predictions, the friendship correctly predicted an earthquake in San Salvador. They announced the Challenger explosion 30 minutes in advance and warned that a Chilean volcano on Cerro San Cristobal was active, although the opposite had been confirmed. In every case, they proved to be right. But how did they do it? As with every answer, Ariel had told him, "We're not from this planet, but we belong to humanity." The curiosity to find out who was hiding under the name of the Angels of the Lord disrupted the family's life. The radio, always on, started to get on Christina's nerves. Octavio's wife, Ariel, and his people gave her a bad feeling. Octavio told Ernesto everything, and then said that Ariel himself had told him that they would soon send him an emissary. That same day, he had communicated with Ernesto for the first time. Was nothing left to chance? Octavio and Ernesto quickly became colleagues. They shared concerns, and each found in the other someone to confide their most extravagant doubts about what they were experiencing. Octavio even introduced Ernesto to a group of people who, also contacted by the friendship, would meet to talk about their experiences. They were far from suspecting that everything would end up taking on international relevance on August 17, 1985, with an extraordinary event. Around 2:30 in the afternoon that day, Cristina, who was glued to the radio with her daughter Claudia, heard a call from the friendship in which they asked her to go outside. Immediately, Cristina hesitated, but after a few seconds, she couldn't resist her curiosity. She left her daughter safe and peeked into her garden at the Florida estate. She couldn't believe what she was seeing with her own eyes. Suspended in the sky, there was a shining object. Amazed, she went back home and contacted Ariel. She told him that if he was controlling that object, he should prove it. She suggested certain movements that were unfailingly performed by the ball of light. There was no doubt left. The friendship were the ones controlling the flying saucer. But Claudia wasn't the sole witness to that. Thousands of citizens noticed the presence of the object, and even national television managed to film it with powerful telephoto lenses. In fact, the phenomenon was even observed in Argentina, as shown by some newspaper clippings from that time. Officials from the Meteorological Directorate pointed out that, from the perspective of their specialty, there was no rational explanation for it. The situation was getting out of hand, and this is where National Aeronautics and Space Administration comes into the story. All these events and the massive sighting on August 17, 1985 changed, as could be deduced, the life of Octavio Ortiz, his family. Every night they tried to get new information, more clues that would confirm the extraterrestrial origin of those communicating with them. One day, through a family friend, Raimundo Sepulveda, the American Space Agency, National Aeronautics and Space Administration sent them a book in which they were supposed to record their communications. Along with the notebook, which had a hardcover and the word record printed on its front, Sepulveda gave them a box of pens that had United States government engraved on their side. The contacts would be interrupted at that very moment. At least, the radio contacts had to switch to other methods in order to keep communicating. But who were the friendship really? Ernesto de la Fuente was also still pursuing that question. That's why he returned to Santiago and shared his experiences with Hugo Pacheco, a public administrator, engineer, and pilot, who is also considered the dean of ufologists. Hugo, in turn, aware of the importance of the information, sought advice and publicity through Rodrigo Fuenzalida, president of the ION, the Chilean Unidentified Flying Object Research Group, and one of the most popular ufologists in the country. Over time, Hugo not only became an expert on the friendship, but also began to practice what they did. According to what he started to say, the friendship carefully chose their contacts and, after a period of testing, invited them to visit the island. The island, according to Pacheco, was a training ground to prepare men and women from this planet for the conditions of outer space. At a certain point, Pacheco began to coordinate a group that met every Saturday to talk about the subject. Leaders of the Nazi movement in Chile also attended the meetings. They claimed that what others mistook for extraterrestrials was nothing more than a hidden German community in the Pacific, although Hugo Pacheco was never invited to the island. He claimed to have chased aboard a Navy boat one of the 8 vessels that docked in Puerto Montt and allegedly supplied the island. However, it had been in vain. The risk of running aground on the reefs or crashing into the rocks had taken him out of the chase. At the same time, Ernesto continued to keep in touch with the friendship members who visited him at his home, always without prior notice. Around that time, they started insisting that he should go with them. That's when Ernesto discovered that his addiction to tobacco had caused a terrible cancer. After they removed a lung, Ariel demanded that Ernesto stop all treatments. It was his time to meet the friendship in person. Ernesto traveled to Kemchi, where he would be picked up by Alberto and taken by the Mytilus II to the island. According to Ernesto de la Fuente, There is a point after crossing the Moraleda Channel where the boats used by the Friendship are guided by a magnetic system to the island. There, a gate between the rocks gives access to the underground areas, equipped with many advancements and all kinds of electronic devices. On the island, Ernesto underwent what he describes as a treatment using wave motion systems and magnetotherapy, as well as tissue regeneration. Apparently, the sophisticated Friendship technology is capable of eradicating all diseases and stopping the aging process. After being cured, Ernesto became the first human to be returned to his home. From that moment on, he was subjected to a ridiculous number of interviews in which he described the experience in great detail. Let's revisit the fundamental aspects of it. Upon arriving at the bay, Ernesto explained the humans were stripped of their jewelry and watches. They were then given a strange bracelet through which they could communicate and receive information. They were also provided with very tight white clothing, like diving suits, but made of plasticized fiber. According to their account, there were heated pools, 3 large greenhouses, and rooms with satellite television. Everything was operated digitally. The Friendship boasted technology that at the time was considered futuristic for our civilization. However, the most striking thing was a network of tunnels that led to several temples, on whose walls there were bas-relief symbols that the man could not recognize. It was a micro-society that functioned perfectly, in harmony, with health and without disturbances. Ernesto saw that many people with a South American appearance were working extracting metals. These people wore a kind of trident on their clothing, a symbol that Ernesto also noticed in other parts of this fantastic place. During his stay on the island, Ernesto managed to see the rooms of Ariel and his fellow believers. But he also learned about the existence of other rooms, with a different atmosphere and pressure that have been created, according to what he was told, for the angels of the Lord. Angels, Nazi extraterrestrials? Much has been written about the extensive chronicles of Ernesto. There are many, however, who believe even though his tumor has been verifiably cured, that Ernesto is simply a fraud. The most skeptical say that what believers call Friendship Island is nothing more than Kent Island, in Isen. What can be seen when the tide goes out? The Chilean Skeptics Association flatly denies the existence of the island, calling it a lie unscrupulous. But while for many a crusade to discredit Ernesto was beginning, from other parts of the world, all kinds of hypotheses started pouring in. The existence of an extraterrestrial base in Chile, managed by a mysterious society, was already considered in 1990 by the French writer Jean Robin. That year, his book Operation Oort was published in Spain, in which he tells the story of Pierre's experience. This man says that after some preliminary contacts, on September 3, 1987, he met with the leaders of a mysterious organization that called itself the Society of He Who Is. The meeting is said to have taken place at Pico Nora in the Pyrenees, from where he was allegedly taken aboard a flying saucer bound for Valparaiso, or, to be more precise, to some inviolable underground chambers located about 5 kilometers from the beaches of this Chilean city. It is believed that there, Pierre found himself inside a network of tunnels whose equipment resembled something out of a science fiction movie. But why would that man have gone to those facilities? It was believed that they were trying to create a psychic field capable of welcoming a mysterious being from space. In this case, the presence of angels was also strongly evoked. Are those biblical figures we mistake for messengers of the Lord actually extraterrestrials? Or is it the other way around? We call extraterrestrials beings that belong to supposed higher spiritual realms. One way or another, the Friendship are not the only ones who have hidden their identity under the appearance of angels. In 1987, a group of young people from the town of Paiporta in eastern Spain claimed to be in contact with Samael, the Prince of Demons, in the setting of a local bar. The alleged angel appeared to be about 30 years old and wore a shirt and jeans. During the meetings, he would dictate things that would inevitably happen the next day. In time, other angels would join the instruction. Anael and Umiel would reveal things with Samael. The book of the 2,000 pages, a text full of prophecies with precise instructions for the salvation of humanity before the end of times. The curious thing is that some of the members of the group arrived in Paiporta after a hidden, unidentified flying object journey that began years earlier in 1983 in Nubeda. For some, the key lies in the description that Ernesto gave of the architecture of the temples, and his description, interestingly, matches that of a strange society that was eradicated in Italy, and it would be one of the many places used by the Friendship to recruit new members. Between 1956 and 1978, an extraordinary process of mass contact took place in Italy, in which about 150 people maintained contact with around 50 individuals who claimed to be extraterrestrials. This is known as the Amicizia case, or the Friendship of Italy. One of these contactees was the scientist Stefano Breccia, who published the book Mass Contact in 2007, where he tells everything that happened during that time. He also presented photographs of ships and beings, as well as other evidence to support the case. In his book, Stefano reveals various information. The friends of Amicizia would be extraterrestrials who consider Earth as one of the 50 mother planets where intelligent life originated and developed in this galactic sector. Their mission was to form colonies in places like the Aspleiades star cluster, from where most of the members of the Friendship Project would come. These beings would have come to Earth a few decades ago in a number of 600 and then split into 12 groups of 50 in Russia, Germany, Austria, France, Italy, Argentina, and Chile. The Amicizia group, which settled in Italy, had secret bases near the city of Pescara, where they even lived together with the local people. Many of them married Earth women and even started families with them. The book also raises the possibility that Albert Einstein himself may have been in contact with the Friendship group. But what is the truth behind this case? A cured one. Ernesto met with Hugo increasingly often. The popular rumor that started to circulate was that the man began preparing people for possible trips to the island. Seeing that radio communications were no longer secure, the Friendship supposedly began visiting Hugo's group with some regularity. The most prepared were selected and didn't return the following week. It is also said that the Friendship supervised those meetings using technologies that erased the memories of those who didn't pass the tests. Were Ernesto and Hugo deceiving gullible people, or were they really preparing them for an experience on another planet? Today, both of them are dead, and they took all the answers with them. Octavio Ortiz, for his part, strongly maintains that the Friendship are looking for humans with a specific genetic code. The purpose is to achieve the perfect hybrid between the races in order to ensure survival in a world that we are slowly destroying. Ernesto made it very clear that although the Friendship could see what was about to happen, they have tools to reverse what we consider inevitable. Are the Friendship trying to save us from our imminent extinction? The mystery remains a subject of debate, and to this day there are still radio enthusiasts who, hopeful, turn their dials, waiting to suddenly hear the deep and friendly voice of the now legendary Ariel. And you tell me, what do you think about the story of Friendship Island? Do you think all of this is true? That all of this is a lie? Maybe there's an extraterrestrial colony near Chile. Maybe it's a German colony, or maybe they're just fantasies. I want you to comment down below. What do you think about this case? I want to thank all the members of the Mephisto clan, because thanks to them, we can keep making this kind of videos. I'm going to leave you a couple of recommendations here so you can keep binge watching. That's all for now. I'm Magnus Mephisto. See you in the next video. Goodbye.